This is one of America's allies in Southeast Asia. This young man is 11 years old. He carries an M16 rifle. He tells me he's used it 4 times already in combat against the North Vietnamese. This year's biggest battle in Indochina is raging not in Vietnam, but here in the mountains of Laos. It pits North Vietnamese regulars against a secret irregular army, organized, advised, supported, and paid by the Central Intelligence Agency. The key to the battle is a high ridge line. This is the famous Skyline Ridge, the keystone of the defensive position at Long Chen. We're getting mortar fire in here right now from the North Vietnamese divisions which surround this place, which is why everybody is staying so low. In the past few minutes, we've had mortar rounds land within 15 yards of here.
I know it, we're damn close. Well, you've been getting 2 rounds, 3 rounds every 10, 15 minutes.
How many kids did they get? Though many of its recruits are under 16, the secret army has been the toughest force opposing the communists in Laos. Now the North Vietnamese are making an all-out effort to destroy it. This week, there is still heavy fighting around Long Chen. The secret army now has men from various ethnic groups, but it began among the Meo hill tribes. The Meo, or Hmong as they call themselves, are a fiercely independent people who thrive in the rugged highlands. Today, most are refugees, clinging to those patches of the mountains still under government control. Despite 10 years of defeat and suffering, most have remained staunch allies of America. Today, with other hill tribes, they are still the backbone of the secret army and make it the closest thing to a people's army on the government side. They have paid dearly for their commitment. Their camps are built of the debris of war. They move constantly, shifting locations as the war sweeps back and forth across their mountains. At each new spot, they dig in to await the next attack. When there's time between moves, they still plant their opium poppies. For centuries, opium was their only cash crop. But the war has reduced the crops to the point where the Hmong smoke most of it themselves. This is Boom Long, 45 miles from the North Vietnamese border and the only major secret army base left in the far north. To get here means a long flight over enemy territory with the pilots dodging anti-aircraft positions. The only link with the outside world is the airstrip, and it is frequently closed by enemy shell fire. There are 6,000 people here. Only a few hundred are soldiers advised by the CIA. The rest are women and children. Boom Long is called the Fortress in the Sky, and it's a fortress under siege. The people spend most of their time repairing the damage from the last enemy attack and digging deeper for the next one. The local Hmong commander requires each family to dig and maintain its own bunker. Casualties have been high, including hundreds of civilians. Manpower is so scarce that some positions are guarded only by straw dummies. Because of its strategic location, the Hmong and their CIA advisors are determined to hold Boom Long as possible. That may not be much longer. Each year, the enemy assaults become heavier. The defenses are littered with the bones of North Vietnamese soldiers who have died here. This week, the Secret Army has been using these positions to attack enemy supply routes. The object, to relieve pressure on Long Chen. If Long Chen falls, Boom Long will almost certainly be next. For years, this compound in the village of Long Chen was one of the most secret spots on Earth. This was headquarters for the CIA and the Secret Army in Laos. It was a little bit of America, crammed with sophisticated electronic gear. Journalists called it Spook Heaven. This year, Spook Heaven has become part of the front line. The CIA has moved to a new location. We talked to a CIA man assigned to the Secret Army. The agency calls him a case officer. He's a civilian, but in any other war, he'd be called a military advisor. Just what do you CIA men do up here?
Well, first of all, let me set the record straight that we do not command any of the combat troops. Our primary role is one of supporting the indigenous Lao forces in MR2. That support involves a number of things. Some of it is technical advice. A great deal of it is training. It involves advice. Well, our advice is one of keeping them informed on what is possible with the resources that are available.
What are we trying to accomplish up here?
Well, the primary aim of the United States government in Laos is to assist the people of Laos to have the kind of government that they want to have. Our job is not one of telling them how to run the war or of having the war become our war. Our task is one of working with them, training them, advising them, letting them make the decisions that they believe are in their national interest. And so far, we have been able to conduct this with very, very few Americans.
The man who commands most of the Secret Army is General Vang Pao. He is a Hmong tribesman who worked closely with the CIA in organizing the Hill people. Today, along with his Secret Army role, he also commands all Lao forces in the most crucial military region. We found him helping his soldiers repair shell holes in the airstrip near his headquarters. He is definitely not an armchair general. He's part warlord, part tribal father figure, and the most effective military leader in Laos today. When the war permits, Vang Pao spends most of his time with other tribal leaders. The Hmong look to him for leadership in politics as well as fighting. But in the tribal hierarchy, Vang Pao is not a dictator, but a sort of first among equals. Decisions are reached only after the traditional long discussions with other clan chiefs. But Vang Pao's favorite spot is the front line. Some of his American CIA advisors complain that VP, as they call him, spends too much time in the foxholes and not enough time plotting grand strategy. But the fact is the soldiers, especially the Hmong soldiers, fight best when VP is around. And despite his advisors, Vang Pao is not about to change his style, even when his arrival attracts enemy mortar fire. Vang Pao likes nothing better than playing the role of an Oriental George Patton and personally directing counter-battery fire.
General, what have we got over in that position we're shooting at?
120 mortar.
A 120 mortar?
Yeah.
Well, that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
We're up on Skyline Ridge, which in terms of the war in Laos is likely to become a legend like Heartbreak Ridge in Korea or Hamburger Hill in Vietnam. These holes we're sitting in right now, up until about 48 hours ago, were occupied by one of the best North Vietnamese regiments there is. All these positions off to our front here are occupied by the North Vietnamese. The secret army was not designed to slug it out with North Vietnamese divisions. Their performance at Long Chen has surprised most experts. But the fighting there is heavier than ever, and no one knows how long they can keep it up. Casualties in this year's battles have been the heaviest ever. They are evacuated in American-furnished planes and helicopters. Most of those who survive are treated in hospitals paid for and run by the American Agency for International Development. The dead are also flown out, wrapped in American body bags. The lightly wounded can expect to be back in the front lines quickly. They can also expect a visit from General Vang Pao, who tries to make sure they get the best care available. Frequently, he is accompanied by an aide-de-camp with a briefcase full of money. Vang Pao and his men received their money direct from the CIA, bypassing the corruption that plagues the Lao regular army. By Lao standards, they are very well paid. Critics have suggested that the rice and money from America are the secret army's main motivation.
No amount of money or rice or medical treatment is going to get any young man to stand up and fight the North Vietnamese and run the very high risk of being killed or maimed for life. Because remember, these are irregulars. They're very much like we had in the Revolutionary War in our own country. They volunteered in and they can volunteer out. The Hmong attitude is that this is his homeland. They're here and they're fighting because this is their homeland. They lose this and there's no place else for them to go.
But each year, the Hmong homeland shrinks. The battles are bigger, the casualty list longer. And there are signs of weariness among the hill tribes. Vang Pao spends a lot of time visiting the isolated Hmong settlements, trying to boost his people's morale. Except for the small local garrison, there are usually few men present. They are all away at the front. One of his unpleasant duties is to inform wives and mothers that their loved ones are dead or missing. This week, some units of the secret army refused to continue the fight at Long Chen. But they were not hill people. The Hmong are a tough and stoic race. And as long as Vang Pao is willing to lead, they seem willing to follow. To continue the fight, the secret army has to look beyond Laos for recruits. These soldiers are Thai volunteers, recruited and trained in Thailand by the CIA, which also pays them. The Lao, and particularly the hill tribes, have been bled white by the war. They have simply run out of manpower. The result is about 8,000 Thai volunteers presently fighting in Laos. Some senators claim this violates a congressional ban on mercenaries being hired to fight in Southeast Asia. Both the Lao and Thai governments are very touchy about the subject. The volunteers have taken heavy casualties in the recent fighting. Where are you from?
I'm from Bangkok.
This is a long way from Bangkok. How long have you been here?
1 year.
You've been here 1 year?
Yes.
You fight the North Vietnamese very much?
Yeah. I work here 1 year. But I think it's very long. It's same 10 years.
1 year here seems like 10 years. Do you like it here?
No, I don't lie.
The entire northeastern region of Thailand has a population of about 18 million Lao. Therefore, these Lao, that is, these Thai of Lao descent, have a reason to defend Laos as well. This is readily understandable. It is not Thai regulars that we have now, but volunteers.
His Highness is satisfied that this does not infringe on Laos's position in the world as a neutralist country.
No problem. They are volunteers who come to fight, as was the case, as you know, in France, with the Foreign Legion, which includes individuals from all nationalities. So why not in our case?
Whatever the diplomatic niceties, the Thai volunteers are absolutely necessary. Without them, the secret army, and Laos too, would probably collapse. Even if that happens, Bang Pao says the Hmong will fight on.
Even if the North Vietnamese could take over all our territory, we will take to the jungle to carry on the fight against them, no matter how long it takes, 50 or even 100 years. We will keep on fighting until the North Vietnamese get out of our land.
These days, Bang Pao seldom sees his home or children. He has been through crises before, but this year, the military situation is worse than ever. He's troubled for the future of his children and his people. But he says he's confident that America will never simply abandon the Hill people. For the civilian charter pilots, the war begins at dawn, when the engines start turning at Vientiane Airport. Air America alone carries 12 million pounds of cargo and nearly 10,000 people out of Vientiane each month. Their destinations are diverse and often dangerous.
Well, now on the unfriendly activity, which was right off to the south, I don't see the same marks that were on the previous chart. But,
no.
But here again, it looks like perhaps we've lost that unfriendly activity.
Yeah.
There are very few milk runs left in Laos. At pilot briefings, the latest reports on enemy anti-aircraft positions are as important as the weather.
Again, if you're low level, good chance you may pick up some unfriendly fire.
Pilots say the only thing worse than flying in Laos is trying to land there. By local standards, this dirt strip set between mountains is a major airport. It is now the Secret Army's headquarters in northern Laos. Big planes bring the cargo in, and from here, smaller planes and helicopters haul it to 100 different sites in the surrounding mountains. These days, much of the cargo is ammunition. Most of it parachuted to what the pilots call the friendlies. The control tower is primitive, and there are no navigation aids. Yet between daylight and dusk, this strip handles 900 takeoffs and landings each day. Some of the planes end up like this. As one pilot said, Air America is not exactly like flying for Pan American out of JFK. This was one of Air America's major operations centers until the enemy overran it. The combination of danger, superb flying, and exotic locale, plus a tradition of secrecy, has led to some highly sensational reporting about Air America. Its pilots have been called America's Flying Foreign Legion and the Lord Jims of Laos.
What is Air America?
Well, it's the same thing today that it always has been, and that is a charter air carrier whose major customer is the United States government. And it's nothing more or less than that. The average age, by the way, is 43 out here, so that they're not a bunch of apple-cheeked youngsters who are looking for big thrills. Most of them have already had their thrills.
Each season, it gets worse. As an example, we're within 15 minutes now of an area last year was like a rest center. This year, as you know, we've already had one airplane shot down. What's the worst thing about flying out here? The mountains, the weather, or the bad guys? It's a combination of all three. We have three distinct flying seasons. It's either smoky, windy, or rainy. And any one of the three combined with the enemy creates the situation that none of us like.
So you don't really have a happy season?
No, there's not.
How long do you plan to keep this up?
Each year I say it's my last one. This is my 7th year now.
What is it that brings you back?
Money. No, not really. It's a big influence, of course. I have 2 daughters to put through school yet, out of my 6. So even though I'm retired, I still have to work.
You like the guys you work with?
Yeah, a real bunch of pros, every one of them.
We have an extreme sense of comradeship and a sense of competition that I think is not excelled in any profession.
Let's say the U.S. government put, let's say, 500,000 troops into North Vietnam to accomplish the same job that we're accomplishing here with a handful of, so to speak, American professionals.
We have a commodity to sell. We can't sell it any place in the world except right here.
And if you want to be, if you just want to be mundane and about it, take this war away, or if we quit, you talk about why we do it. If most of us went back to the United States, we would be a dirty old man.
Come on, Jim, you're a dirty old man here. What are you talking about?
Well, not really. It is a different operation, I think, than you'll find any place in the world. But on the other hand, as far as professional standards go, we do meet the requirements of any major airline, regardless of where it is throughout the world.
It is becoming tougher, but it hasn't reached the point where we're giving up by any stretch of the imagination. All of us are very talented, very, very talented, and we can avoid what they have given us so far. But it is becoming a little more difficult for us to do.
We are really all...
If it's a normal day today in Vietnam, we and our allies will kill about 200 Viet Cong. In turn, they will kill or wound about 100 Americans, and we will spend over $48 million. And all this is just a part of our ground war in Asia against communist aggression.
Right over here to the right, we discovered 2 tunnels. And we're preparing to blow them very shortly.
There's dirt around the holes. We can see that they haven't been dug too long. So this means they're not too far away.
Today in the air war, if things are normal, we will drop bombs in nearly 800 airstrikes. About 100 of these airstrikes, however, are part of the semi-secret war in Laos. This bomb, for instance, will fall on communist infiltration routes through Laos to South Vietnam and Thailand. Like the bomb, the plane, the equipment, the rockets, the war itself is American-made, supported, supplied, or directed. These planes will be flown by American-trained Laotian pilots. Part of the holding action we support in Laos while we try and defeat the same enemy in Vietnam. The ground war in Laos is a bloody mixture of old and new, of swift guerrilla raids and static trench warfare, where the same troops have occupied the same muddy holes for years, with the enemy dug in only a few hundred yards away. Despite 2 formal peace treaties, the guns really haven't stopped firing in 12 years, making this Asia's longest continuous shooting war. Its great significance is that it exemplifies all our past Asian policies, blunders, hesitations, and frustrations. And for those who believe negotiations and conferences are the solution to war in Asia, it has some somber lessons. Since 1953, tiny Laos has probably been negotiated over and conferred over more often and by more people than any spot on Earth. This is the result. The tragic war in landlocked and impoverished Laos is less an ideological battle than a problem of simple geography. For the communists to carry out their infiltration of Thailand and their war in South Vietnam, they need to travel through Laos. Battalions of North Vietnamese are dug in on the Plain of Jars, the traditional invasion route to the Mekong. Chinese engineer battalions are building roads towards the border of Thailand from China's Yunnan province. 50,000 North Vietnamese move supplies down the Ho Chi Minh Trail to South Vietnam. Communist supplies are moved from Cambodia to South Vietnam along the Sihanouk Trail. The fight to stop this aggression is part of the battle for Asia. Tonight, Laos, the forgotten war. Ted Yates, NBC News, reporting.
I want to make a brief statement about Laos. It is, I think, important for all Americans to understand this difficult and potentially dangerous problem. In the last half of 1960, a series of sudden maneuvers occurred, and the communists and their supporters turned to a new and greatly intensified military effort to take over.
Since this pronouncement by President Kennedy in 1961, over $300 million in U.S. arms have gone to Laos, but the country is still dominated by the communists, and the chaos in Laos, as it was then called, still goes on. The chaos, in fact, has increased. Here at the royal capital of Luang Prabang, in addition to its other problems, Laos has two capitals, is the king. He's been in the palace 6 years, but still refuses to be crowned because, as soothsayers report, the stars are not yet right for the event. About the only thing that brings the king to Vientiane, the administrative capital, are royal matters, in this case, the funeral of a royal prince. Shielded from the sun, the monarch leads the mourners. With him, royal princes, behind the feudal hierarchy of Laos. First, the Royal Officers Corps. They run the country, sometimes well, sometimes crookedly, invariably at odds with each other. The important Buddhist monks. And the representatives of 60 tribes that add the element of ethnic diversity to the country's political confusions. The funeral cortege passes Vientiane's greatest edifice. Begun as the Laotian Victory Monument, the project sits abandoned. Probably because there has been no such thing as victory in Laos for anyone. It is now called, more appropriately, the Monument to the Dead. Most of its cement was stolen from U.S. aid. Royal funerals are one of the events that attract all of Vientiane's diplomatic corps, one of Asia's best stocked. Among the world's great fantasies is Laotian neutrality. But this myth enables all the enemy diplomats to mingle socially, including those fighting the hardest in Laos. Both North and South Vietnam attend a day's funeral. And bedecked in proletarian finery, the jaunty dean of the diplomatic corps, the communist Chinese ambassador. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in Alice in Wonderland, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. In the fantasy of Laos, the word neutrality is used much